I never imagined myself living in a small town. I was a city man through and through, used to the rhythm of honking horns, late-night diners, and the comfort of blending into a crowd. But after the end of a long-term relationship that left me drained and disillusioned, I needed to start over. Somewhere quieter, somewhere different. That's how I ended up in Briar Ridge, a town so small that everyone waved to each other and the post office still had a hand-painted sign. I rented a modest house on the edge of town, nothing fancy. But it had a wraparound porch and a view of the hills that soothed me more than I expected. People were kind, mostly curious. The barista at the local coffee shop asked where I was from before she asked what I wanted to drink. The cashier at the grocery store commented on every item I bought, like a neighbor peeking into my pantry. Privacy here, I quickly realized, was more of a courtesy than a right. One evening, a few days after settling in, I decided to take a walk. The sky was streaked with orange and pink as the sun slipped behind the trees. The air was cool and still, filled only with the distant chirping of crickets and the soft rustle of leaves. For once, my mind felt quiet too. I was lost in thought when I heard the hum of a car creeping up behind me. I turned, expecting to see a neighbor or maybe a curious passerby. Instead, it was a black and white police cruiser. The window rolled down, and that's when I saw him. The man behind the wheel was tall and broad-shouldered, his uniform crisp and clean. His skin, deep and rich in color, seemed to glow beneath the fading light. His expression was serious, but not unfriendly. If anything, there was a kind of warmth hidden behind those steady eyes. "You're new around here, aren't you?" he asked, his voice low and calm, with a slight southern edge. "Yeah," I replied, surprised by how fast my heart started to beat. "Just moved in last week." He gave a slow nod. "Thought so. New faces stand out in a place like this." I chuckled nervously. "I can imagine. I'm Officer Malik Thompson," he said, his tone still official, but there was a glimmer of something personal there too. "You're out kinda late. Just getting a feel for the neighborhood," I replied, trying to sound casual. "It's quieter than I'm used to." "City guy?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Guilty as charged." He smiled slightly and nodded. "Well, you'll find things work a bit different around here. It's not about where you go, it's who you know." I wasn't sure what he meant by that, but his words lingered in the air like a riddle. He didn't drive off right away. Neither of us seemed ready to end the conversation. There was something between us already, unspoken, unnamed, but present. It felt like we were standing on the edge of something neither of us could quite explain. "If you ever need anything," he said finally, "don't hesitate to call. We look out for each other in this town." He held my gaze for just a moment longer than necessary. Then, he gave a quick nod, rolled up the window, and drove off into the twilight. I stood there for a while, watching the taillights disappear into the distance. There was no logical reason why I should have felt so drawn to a stranger I'd just met. But somehow, Officer Malik Thompson didn't feel like a stranger at all. And deep down, I knew this wouldn't be the last time I saw him. Briar Ridge had its routines. Same faces, same places, same friendly nods and slow conversations that made time feel like it moved a little differently here. At first, I found it comforting, predictable. But ever since that first meeting with Officer Malik Thompson, my eyes scanned every street corner and parking lot for a glimpse of his patrol car. I told myself I was being silly. He was just doing his job, just being polite to a newcomer. But no matter how I reasoned it, my thoughts always wandered back to him. His voice, his eyes, the way his words carried weight beneath their calm surface. There was something about Malik that stuck with me. About a week later, I was at the small bookstore downtown. It was tucked between a barbershop and a bakery, with creaky wooden floors and shelves that leaned slightly from age. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, just wandering, maybe searching for something to fill the quiet. That's when I saw him. He stood by the nonfiction section, flipping through a hardcover with one hand, the other resting casually on his belt. He looked relaxed, his uniform replaced by jeans and a dark jacket. He hadn't noticed me yet. Before I could think twice, I walked over. "Didn't expect to find you in a place like this," I said, trying to keep my tone light. Malik looked up, a flicker of surprise in his eyes before he smiled. A real one this time. Not the kind worn out of duty. "Lucas," he said, saying my name like it had been on the tip of his tongue. "Didn't expect to see you either." I shrugged, glancing at the book in his hand. Local history? He chuckled softly. I like knowing where I live. Helps me understand the people better. It was a simple answer, but it said a lot. Malik wasn't just a man in uniform. He was someone who cared deeply about his roots. About belonging. We talked for a few minutes. Nothing heavy. Books. Coffee. The town's best pie. He insisted it wasn't the diner, but a woman named Betty who sold out of her porch on Sundays. Every now and then, his eyes would search mine, like he was waiting to see if I'd break the unspoken tension hanging between us. I was just about to grab a coffee. He said at one point, "You want to join me?" There was hesitation in his voice, like he knew this was a step forward into unfamiliar territory, but I didn't hesitate. "Sure," I said, heart thudding in my chest. We walked to a quiet cafe down the street, tucked into a side alley most tourists never found. It was dimly lit, with mismatched chairs and soft jazz humming in the background. We found a table near the back, where no one could overhear. "I've been thinking about the other night," Malik said, stirring cream into his cup. I met his gaze. "Me too. This isn't simple," he continued, his voice low. "This town, people talk. And me, I'm not just another guy. I wear the badge. I've got a certain image to keep." I nodded slowly. "I understand, but I also think, maybe it doesn't have to be that complicated." His eyes lingered on mine for a long moment. Then he leaned back in his seat, exhaling through his nose. "Maybe." The moment stretched between us like a thread pulled tight. And then, as if making a silent agreement, he said, "If we do this, if we talk, spend time, it stays between us. For now." I felt a thrill ripple through me. Not fear, but something electric, hopeful. "I can keep a secret," I said quietly. His lips twitched into a smile. "I figured you could." We left the cafe separately that evening. No words about what it meant. No labels. Just a silent understanding that something had begun, something fragile, yet real. And as I watched Malik disappear into the cool night air, I knew I'd do anything to protect what was quietly forming between us. Our agreement was clear. Keep things quiet. Keep things safe. But nothing about what I felt for Malik was quiet. The days that followed our coffee shop conversation were filled with anticipation, stolen glances, cautious smiles when we passed each other in town, and the occasional text from a number I never saved in my contacts. "You free tonight? Meet me by the creek after sunset." Each message sent my heart racing like I was back in high school sneaking out past curfew. We had our spots. A wooded path behind the old community center. The walking trail near the abandoned train depot. But our favorite was the grassy bank along a quiet creek at the edge of town. The sound of rushing water offered a natural hush, and the curve of the hill shielded us from prying eyes. That's where we met most often. One evening, after the last streaks of sunlight had disappeared behind the trees, I found Malik already waiting at our spot. He stood with his back to me, hands in his jacket pockets, looking out over the water. His silhouette was calm, solid, reassuring. When he turned and saw me, something in his face softened. "I didn't know if you'd come," he said, his voice low. "I always will," I replied without hesitation. We sat on the cool grass, shoulder to shoulder, our knees almost touching. The space between us felt thick with meaning. For a while, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, it was something else. Charged, heavy with the things we didn't know how to say. Eventually, Malik let out a long sigh. "I've never done this before," he admitted. "Kept something like this hidden. It's not who I am." I turned to face him. "Then why are you doing it?" He met my eyes. And for a second, the mask of control he always wore slipped away. "Because I don't want to lose this." "Lose you?" My chest tightened. I wasn't sure what I expected. But it wasn't that. "You're not going to lose me," I said gently, placing my hand over his. His fingers didn't move for a second, but then they wrapped around mine with quiet strength. "I've spent my whole life trying to be the right kind of man," he continued. "Strong, responsible, dependable, the kind people trust in a uniform. But now, I'm starting to realize I've been leaving a part of myself behind just to keep up that image." I nodded, letting him speak, letting the moment unfold without pushing. "I'm not ashamed of who I am," he said after a long pause. "But I am afraid of what this town would do if they knew. What it would mean for my job, my family, my standing." "I understand," I whispered. "But Malik, what about what it means for your heart?" He looked at me then. really looked at me, like I was the first person in a long time who had asked him to think about what he wanted. Not just what was expected of him. In that moment, something shifted. The air grew still. The world narrowed to just the two of us. And then he leaned in. Slowly, giving me every chance to pull away. But I didn't. Our lips met, tentative at first, then deeper, full of all the feelings we had kept behind locked doors. The kiss was quiet, but powerful, a whisper of truth neither of us could ignore anymore. When we finally pulled apart, Malik rested his forehead against mine. "This is dangerous," he murmured. "I know," I said, my voice barely above a breath. "But it's real." He nodded slowly. "Then we hold on to it. No matter what." As we sat there beneath the stars, our hands entwined and hearts pounding, I knew something had begun that night. Something undeniable. A hidden flame had been lit, and though we had to shield it from the world, it was burning brighter than ever. The days that followed felt like a strange kind of double life. In public, Malik and I were two polite acquaintances, just a town officer and a newcomer exchanging the occasional nod or passing word. But in private, when the sun dipped low and the streets emptied out, we became something else entirely. We were lovers, not in the grand, sweeping, movie scene way. There were no public declarations or hand-in-hand strolls down Main Street. Our love lived in the quiet moments, in the late-night texts, in the soft knock at my back door after midnight, in the gentle touches beneath the cover of trees. But hiding love, especially when it runs deep, takes its toll. There were days when I'd catch sight of Malik walking with his colleagues in uniform. His posture straight, his expression unreadable. I'd feel a swell of pride, but also a pang of longing. I wanted to cross the street, call his name, smile the way I always did when I saw him. But I couldn't. Instead, I dropped my gaze and walk on, pretending he was no more than another face in the crowd. And sometimes, I could feel his eyes follow me. One afternoon, as I browsed the fresh produce at the Saturday farmers market, Malik passed by with a fellow officer. He didn't stop, didn't say a word, but his fingers brushed mine as he moved through the crowd. It was quick, so quick no one else noticed, but it sent a jolt through me. A reminder that even in silence, we were tethered to each other. That night, we met behind the old general store. The moonlight glinted off the metal of the delivery dock, and Malik looked more tired than I'd ever seen him. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded, but his eyes told another story. "We had a department meeting today," he said quietly. "Integrity, community image, setting an example." His voice hardened slightly. "They don't say it outright, but it's all about appearances. About fitting into the mold they expect." I reached for his hand. He didn't pull away, but he didn't hold on either. "We can stop, if it's too much," I whispered, the words bitter in my mouth. "If this is putting you at risk." "No." His voice was firm, steady. "I don't want to stop. I wish it wasn't like this. I wish I could walk down the street and not worry about someone seeing us." "I wish that too," I said, my heart aching with the weight of it all. He finally looked at me then. His eyes filled with both exhaustion and something more tender. "I don't know how long I can keep this up. Lucas, every time I see you, I want to reach for you. And every time I stop myself, it feels like I'm betraying something real." I feel the same way. For a long moment, we just stood there, the cool night air wrapping around us. There was no solution, no quick fix, just the heaviness of our truth, tucked away in a world that wasn't ready to hold it. As the weeks went on, that heaviness grew. One night, we met at the creek again. But the mood was different. Tense. Malik paced instead of sitting, his jaw tight. "I almost slipped today," he said abruptly. "Called you by name in front of someone." My stomach dropped. "What happened?" "Nothing." I covered it, but it scared me. He turned to face me. "I don't want to keep lying. I don't want to keep pretending." "Then maybe we shouldn't," I said softly. "Maybe there's a way out of this. A way we can live without hiding." He stared at me, uncertain. "You're saying leave?" I'm saying, think about it. We could go somewhere new. Start fresh. Just you and me. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked out over the water. His expression clouded. "I've worked so hard to build something here," he said. "My job, my reputation, leaving it all behind. I'm not asking you to decide tonight," I said gently. "But maybe it's time we started thinking about what our love would look like if it didn't have to hide." We sat in silence after that, the creek rushing beside us, our hands barely touching. The flame between us still burned, but the shadows around it were starting to close in. The longer we stayed in Briar Ridge, the harder it became to keep our world from colliding with the one everyone else saw. What started as thrilling, our secret meetings, the late-night touches, the whispered confessions, was now weighted by anxiety. Every glance over the shoulder, every unexpected knock at the door, every familiar face in a place we thought was private. We were running out of places to hide. One evening, Malik texted me, "Meet me near the old tool shed behind the rec center. 9 p.m. It was one of our quieter spots, dark, overgrown, mostly forgotten by the rest of town. I arrived a few minutes early. The night air cool and crisp. Malik showed up soon after, dressed casually in jeans and a hoodie, looking less like a cop and more like a man trying to disappear into the background. We didn't speak much. We didn't need to. Just being near each other felt like exhaling after holding our breath all day. But that calm shattered in an instant. The sound of approaching footsteps on gravel snapped both of our heads around. Instinctively, we stepped apart. My heart pounded. The footsteps came closer, louder, until out of the shadows stepped a figure I recognized from around town. It was Officer Greg Talbot, one of Malik's fellow patrolmen. A big guy, always loud at the diner, always watching. He paused, eyes flicking between us. "Evening, Malik," he said casually, though there was a strange tension behind his words. "Greg," Malik responded, cool and steady. "Didn't expect to see you out here." "Same." Greg looked at me. "You're the new guy, right, Lucas?" I gave a tight smile, trying not to look like a deer in headlights. "That's me. Small town," he said, voice measured. "Interesting place for a walk." Malik didn't miss a beat. Lucas was just about to head home. I was on my patrol. Saw him lingering near the lot and figured I'd check in. I nodded, picking up on the cue. "Yeah, was just out thinking. Long day." Greg studied us a moment longer, like he was reading something we hadn't said out loud. Then he gave a small nod. "Well, don't stay out too late. You know how folks talk." With that, he turned and walked off, his footsteps growing fainter with each step. When the sound finally disappeared, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "That was too close," I whispered. Malik ran a hand over his face, visibly shaken. "Way too close." For the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes, not just fear of being discovered, but of what that discovery could mean. I touched his arm gently. "Maybe, we really do need to stop for a while. Just until things calm down." He shook his head almost immediately. "No, Lucas, I don't want to lose what we have. We need to be more careful." But I could feel it. Something had shifted between us. Every meeting now felt like a risk. Every shadow held suspicion. Every friendly face might become the one that unraveled everything. A few nights later, we nearly ran into someone we both knew at the diner. We'd gone separately, like always, and planned to leave together after a quiet meal. But just as Malik reached for the door to exit, he spotted one of the town council members coming in. We had to act like strangers, again. Afterward, standing outside in the dark, Malik's jaw clenched as he looked at me. "This isn't easy for me," he said, voice low and raw. "Being with you, it's worth it. But I feel like I'm living two lives. And the line between them is getting thinner." I reached out, took his hand in mine. "You're not alone in this. We're in it together." He closed his eyes for a moment, as if soaking in my words. "You're special to me, Lucas. I've never felt like this about anyone. Ever." Hearing that, it lit something inside me. Stronger than fear, stronger than doubt. As we parted that night, I watched him walk into the shadows. And I knew one thing with complete clarity. This wasn't a secret fling. It was something real, something worth fighting for. The morning after our near miss at the diner, I couldn't shake the heaviness in my chest. I sat by the window with my coffee, staring out at the quiet street, wondering how much longer we could keep this up. The secrecy that once made our relationship feel exciting now felt like a burden, one that was pressing harder on Malik with each passing day. That evening, we decided to meet at a more secluded place, an old storage barn at the edge of Briar Ridge, where no one ever went unless they were dumping scrap. I parked a few blocks away and walked the rest of the way through the narrow, wooded path. When I reached the barn, Malik was already there, leaning against the side of the building, arms folded, brow furrowed. "You okay?" I asked, approaching slowly. He nodded, but didn't meet my eyes. I've been thinking about what you said. About leaving. I waited, heart pounding. I used to think this town was everything. He said, my job, the people, the structure of it all. It gave me purpose. It still can, I said gently, but maybe somewhere else, somewhere we don't have to pretend. He looked at me then, his eyes full of conflict. I've given years to this place. Lucas, built trust, earned my way into the uniform. Leaving feels like throwing all that away. But staying, what does that cost you? I whispered. Malik didn't answer right away. Instead, he closed the space between us and took my hands in his. His grip was warm and steady, but I could feel a tremble in it. You make me feel seen, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Not as the officer, not as what people expect me to be. Just me. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Then come with me. Let's find somewhere we can be ourselves. No more hiding, no more fear. He stepped back, running a hand over his face. You really think it's that simple? That we can just pack up and go? No, I said honestly, but I know staying here isn't simple either. We've been fighting so hard to fit into this place, when maybe it was never meant to hold us. Malik looked out toward the trees, the moonlight casting long shadows across the field. For a long time, he said nothing. Then, finally, he turned back to me. What would we even do? He asked quietly. Where would we go? I don't care, I replied, stepping closer. Pick a place, any place. A city where no one knows us. A small town where we can start over. We'll figure it out. He studied me for a moment. The weight of the decision reflected in his eyes. Then he exhaled, slow and deep, and nodded. Okay, he said, let's do it, let's go. Relief and joy swept through me like a wave, so strong I could hardly breathe. We'll find our place, I said, voice thick with emotion, one where we don't have to choose between love and freedom. That night, we made our first plans. We talked about jobs, cities, and what it would mean to truly start over. Malik said he'd hand in his resignation within the week, quietly. With a simple note about personal reasons, I started clearing out my house, selling what I didn't need, donating the rest. As the plan took shape, a strange sense of calm settled over us. It was still scary. Walking away from the familiar always is, but the fear felt lighter than the weight we'd been carrying. One night, curled up on the couch after another long day of preparations, I turned to him. Are you sure? I asked. He looked at me, eyes steady and sure. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. And I believed him. We weren't running away. We were running toward something. Toward a future that belonged to us, and only us. The morning we left Briar Ridge was quiet. Almost eerily so. No neighbors waved from their porches. No kids biked past like they usually did. It was as if the town itself knew we were slipping away and had respectfully turned its back to let us go in peace. Malik stood in his old bedroom, folding his uniform one last time. He held it for a moment, not like a man saying goodbye to a job, but like someone laying to rest a version of himself. Then he placed it back in the closet and walked away without looking back. We loaded up the car in silence. A few duffel bags, a small stack of boxes, a framed photo or two. Nothing we couldn't live without. Everything we truly needed was already with us, in the car. In our hearts. As the town disappeared in the rearview mirror, Malik reached over and took my hand. His grip was steady. Here's to new beginnings, he said softly. To us, I replied, unable to stop the smile from spreading across my face. We drove for hours, talking about where to go next. There was no rigid plan, just a shared dream, somewhere by the coast, where the sound of waves could lull us to sleep, and the mornings promised anonymity and freedom. After a few days on the road, we found it, a small seaside town in North Carolina. Quiet and beautiful, with winding streets, mom and pop shops, and a breeze that always carried the scent of salt and pine. We rented a modest cottage near the dunes, painted white with a blue door, like something out of a postcard. No one there knew our names, and we liked it that way. The first week felt like coming up for air. We went grocery shopping without fear, held hands on our walks, sat together on the porch swing at night, sipping coffee or wine, talking about everything and nothing. For the first time, we weren't performing for the world. We were just us. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast gold across the ocean, Malik turned to me. I didn't know I could feel this at peace. He said, I looked at him, taking in the way his face had softened since we left. The tension that used to live between his brows was gone. His eyes sparkled more easily now. Unburdened. Neither did I replied. But this. You're worth everything we gave up. He smiled, and there was something in that smile that told me he believed it too. Weeks turned into months. We built a rhythm together. Malik picked up work at a local community center, helping with youth outreach and sports programs. I began writing again, something I hadn't done in years. Our home filled with warmth, framed photos, houseplants, and the quiet laughter of two people who had finally allowed themselves to live. One afternoon, as we were planting herbs in the backyard, Malik suddenly paused and looked at me. "What would you think?" he said slowly. "About staying? Not just for now, but for good." I blinked, caught off guard, then grinned. "I'd think. That's the best idea you've ever had." So we stayed. We painted the walls, adopted a dog, hosted a neighbor for dinner. We created a life, a real life together. One built not on secrets, but on love, honesty, and the freedom we fought so hard to find. On a cool autumn night, we sat on our porch wrapped in a shared blanket, watching the stars blink to life. Malik took my hand, his voice soft and full of meaning. "To the life we chose. To the love we didn't let go. To us," I whispered, squeezing his hand. Looking back, I know the road we took wasn't easy. There were risks, pain, fear, but every moment, every choice, led us here. To a place where we didn't have to hide. To a life where we could love openly, freely, and fully. So if you're reading this, if you've ever felt the weight of pretending, of hiding who you are, know this. You're not alone. There is love waiting for you. A love that doesn't ask you to shrink or silence yourself. A love that's worth everything. And sometimes, all it takes is the courage to say yes, to love, to change, to yourself.